everybody and welcome to Flock Talk. Today we're going to be learning how to teach your bird to get a hole in one. Good girl. I had no idea what to call this trick. I did all of the recording for the training sessions of this trick. Zivi completely learned the trick and I still had no idea what to call it. So I did a short video of Mia performing this trick and sent it out to you guys on Tumblr asking what you think this trick should be called, and the basically unanimous response was hole in one. So that's what we're going with here, that's what this trick is going to be called, and that's what we're going with. So the basic premise of this trick is fairly simple. All we're doing is teaching a bird to lean over. It's not exactly that difficult to do, but the part that can be a bit tricky completely depends on your bird and their comfort levels when it comes to having their backs touched and that sort of comfort. Now, I chose Zivi to teach this trick to specifically because Zivi does not like having her back touched. If I get near it, she's going to turn her head and start telling me to back off because she doesn't like it. So I did this trick with Zivi specifically to show that even if you have a bird that's protective of their back, that's aggressive towards having the back touched, this trick can still completely be done so long as you follow what they're saying, so long as you're listening to their body language and doing what the bird wants to be doing. So when you're doing this trick, do keep in mind to watch your bird, listen to what they're saying. If you see them getting a little aggressive or a little uncomfortable with what's going on, just back up a couple steps. They don't need to progress so fast that, you know, it's not the end of the world if they take a couple extra lessons to get to the end point without forcing them. Okay, so getting started on this trick, the first thing we're going to do is use our target stick to teach Zivi to bend over. If you don't have a target stick or your bird isn't target trained, you can also lure them with a treat, but targeting and using a target stick is more recommended because it's more accurate and you're not bribing the bird as per se. You're using a trick they've already learned to help use as a base for learning more tricks in the future. That's kind of the main function of target training and why it's so helpful. So I've got my target stick there, I've got my clicker, and I'm just gonna get her to start bending over. I know Zivi's really good at target training, I know she's gonna go right for that stick with no problems, but if you notice that your bird is having hesitation or they don't want to bend quite that far, then you don't have to put the stick as low as I did right at the start. You can have it just a little bit in front of them so they're just bending a little bit. They do not have to be bending all the way over, flat, perpendicular to the floor right off the bat. So again, listen to your bird's body language and progress as fast as your bird would like to. If that means having slower progressions just to get bent over, that's totally fine. Do whatever is best for your bird in your particular situation. So once I've got Zivi bending over completely reliably, I'm just going to start very slowly closing my hand. And I'm not going to close my hand around her while she's bent over. I'm going to use the closing of my hand as sort of a cue for the trick. So after every time she's done it right, I'm going to make sure that I return my hand back to that open flat position. Because me closing my hand into that O shape is what's going to cue her into bending over in the future. So we really want to make sure that after every time we're encouraging to bend down into our hand, we're opening it right back up, because otherwise it's just going to make it harder down the road. So we're just luring her down into this sort of C shape to start, because we don't want to close it right down, because I know that's something Zivi's not comfortable with and that your bird may not be comfortable with either. So again, you're just going to close your hand in the smallest progressions that your bird needs. With Zivi, I was about to get a pretty decent C shape and she was totally fine with that to go, but your bird may just need only the tips of your fingers to be bent for them to be comfortable with this. So just make sure to do what is best for your bird and don't go doing things too fast just because you want them to learn the trick faster. Make sure that you're doing whatever is best for your bird. If they're uncomfortable, just open your hand up a little bit, start from scratch, do whatever is best for your bird. So once you've got them reliably bending down into that C shape, you can start closing your hand a little bit more. So now I've got a bit more of an O and I'm starting to get, you know, my thumb touching the other fingertips. So we're getting to the proper shape there. And remember, I'm returning my hand back into that flat, open position to make sure that I'm not confusing her and that I'm using the closing of my hand as the cue for the trick. So every single time that my hand is open, I don't want to be rewarding her for any time she bends over, because that's not what the trick is. The trick is only to bend over when my hand is closed. And this is important. The most important part of training is messing up. If the bird doesn't make mistakes, they don't exactly know the requirements to earn the reward. If they're just getting treats here and there all willy-nilly, then they don't really know why they're getting a treat. They just know they can kind of do this and it'll happen. So by opening my hand and having Zivi bend over and mess up, because that's not what's right, she can only bend over if my hand is closed, she's gonna learn, hey, this isn't right, I'm not getting food for this, and that will help encourage her to try and figure out why she's not getting food when my hand is open, but she's only getting food when my hand is closed. So this trick for ZB here took around 2 to 3 training sessions. The third was kind of finessing it a little bit, getting her a bit more responsive with the trick. But for the most part, this entire concept was learned in 2, let's say about 5-minute sessions. So it can be learned fairly quickly, but again, every bird is different. And what you'll find when you start a new training session is that your bird is gonna bounce back a little bit. They're gonna take a couple steps back and not quite remember where you finished off the day before. So when you're starting off a new training session, it is very important that you kind of start from the beginning. You go right from the basics, see how much they remember and where they last finished off, so that way you can set them up for success. You can't expect the bird to remember exactly what they did at the very end of a training session. They probably won't, or it'll just take a little bit of time for them to get back up to that point. So always start from the beginning, give them a basic little warm-up to get them back into the trick, and slowly begin progressing that hand down again. Especially if you have a bird that is very defensive of their back, you're going to want to do this every single time, just to make sure the bird is aware of what's happening, they're comfortable with what's going on, because at this point, the bird doesn't understand the trick. They haven't learned it, they don't get the concept. So if you're just closing your hand around them and this is something they're uncomfortable with, they're not going to be having a fun time. So by taking that second at the very beginning of the training session to just back it up and kind of get them in the mindset of, oh hey, we're learning this trick, this is what happens, you're okay with this, right? It helps the bird just get more comfortable with the situation and be a lot more likely to perform the trick that we want them to learn, as opposed to getting defensive and aggressive and just uncomfortable and having a bad time. So just take those couple seconds to back up and refresh your bird's mind at the beginning of every training session. So as you can see here, we're kind of approaching the third training session that's happening, and I've removed the target stick from the training session. And the reason for this is because the target stick is in the cue. I want to get her relying more on the closing of my hand. So now what I'm doing is I'm just encouraging her for any sort of little action of moving towards my hand. And I'm not using a treat to lure her, I'm using the presence of my hand underneath as kind of a guide for her to understand to come down just a little bit further. Because ZB knows what to do, she knows to follow my hand. And it's gonna just encourage her to go a little bit deeper into my closed hand, which is what I want the end result of the trick to be. So you can start to see here how my hand is getting farther away. I'm not needing to use it to guide her all the way down into the hole anymore. So what I'm able to do is get her more relying on the movement of the hand she's standing on as the cue for getting down into the position I want her to be. So I no longer need to use my other hand or the target stick as the cue. What she's now going to be relying on is my hand closing. And remember, this happened because at the very beginning we were returning back to this open-handed state after the trick was complete. And by doing that, it's just another cue to her, so that way she's not just relying on the presence of the target stick pointing her down. She was also noticing every time the target stick shows up, this hand is closing. So when it removes, she had that second cue there, kind of hinting to her that this is what she should be doing. So when it comes down to the end session here, you can see her really starting to understand to just bend down as soon as my hand closes. And every now and then you'll see her take a little step back where she just needs a second to understand what's happening, and I'll just open my hand up a little bit more. But by removing that target stick and just relying on the presence of my hands now, you can see that she's going to start using the closing of my hand as the cue to get to that position a whole lot more than she was in the previous sessions. She no longer needs my other hand there as a cue, but you'll see that she's a little bit hesitant sometimes, and she's not going as far down as I might like her to go. So what you'll see me do is I'll close my hand and cue her, and if she doesn't go down far enough or she doesn't stay down as far as I'd like her to, I don't reward her. What I'll do is I'll just keep my hand in that position, and she'll know, okay, this didn't work. What can I change to earn the treat? And she'll either sit there a little bit longer, or she may poke her head down just a little bit further. And that's exactly what we want, and that's exactly what's going to help us get to that end goal where I can close my hand, have her dive down, and sit there until I tell her to get back up. So that about sums it up for this training session. Like I said, it's not a super complicated concept to understand. All you're doing is teaching the bird to bend over and then closing your hand around them. The one thing you do absolutely need to focus on when you're teaching this trick is that you're watching your bird's body language and you're moving with your comfort level. There are very few birds that actually like having hands going up behind their back. Mia is a bird that will tolerate it, and you can see I can just kind of grab her and she doesn't mind. But all birds are different, and you need to do what is best for your bird. If your bird is fine with you starting with your hand closed, that's okay. That's totally fine. Start there. If your bird's comfortable with it, it's fine. But if you have a bird that's a bit more sensitive or a bit more likely to get aggressive when they have a hand coming at them like that, it is probably best to start with your hand open and to just slowly work your way down and just progress at whatever pace is best for your bird. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if there are any more tips or tricks or questions that you have that you would like me to answer, feel free to leave a comment down below and I will get to them as soon as possible. I can promise you that. So thank you guys again, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.